You're about to witness something you've never witnessed before.
So
as I begin, with a simple oath, we affirm old traditions and make new beginnings. The American story, a story of flawed and fallible people.
You know, just for your sake, I mean, when he's talking about traditions and such like that, I think he's referring to his Masonic traditions. You know, a lot of this stuff, they call it double speak, and, you know, it's masked with a lot of things that most people are not aware of. But I'm going to point out some to you here in a minute after we go through this.
We do not know the pain of poverty, but we can listen to those who do. If we permit our economy to drift and decline, the vulnerable will suffer most. We must follow no other course. Every child must be taught these principles.
Okay, so that's saying, you know, they plan to teach our children these things. Now, I know I'm being a little picky about this stuff, but because I'm going to show you where, you know, what he's really talking about behind the scenes, you know, and, you know, that's really, I'm sure a lot of us are starting to realize that, hey, there's been some things taught to our children throughout, you know, the school systems, the educational system, especially once they get at that college age, where these are a lot of the ones that are active, or you could even say activated, you know, under Antifa or BLM or whatever, you know, where they're taking it to the level of creating chaos. I'm not, like I said, I'm not meaning to imply everybody involved is always knowingly carrying out these endeavors, but they're definitely, you know, some of them that are nefarious and out to, you know, carry out this agenda. Okay,
every citizen must uphold them. Now it is a seed upon the wind,
a seed
taking root in many nations.
Not
In a time of peace, the stakes of our debates appear.
Okay, just to point out, it's like a seed taking root in many nations. What is he talking about? Because this is for the United States. You would think he would be saying something, you know, not that you wouldn't address, you know, your responsibility that you have, you know, with your allies or something like that. But I mean, he's talking about building something, planting something in every nation. Think about that.
Small, but the stakes for America are never small. The enemies of liberty in our country should make no mistake. Our national courage has been clear in times of depression.
Okay, just real quick, you know, he's about to say the phrase that we're gonna elaborate on in here in a minute, and this is where it's like, hey, there's truth mixed into some of this. There's things that, you know, because they're in there, people don't catch the things that are a little off. Okay, so he's about to quote some scriptures.
When defeating common dangers define our common good, we will confront weapons of mass destruction. We will build our defenses beyond challenge, lest weakness invite challenge. When we see that wounded traveler on the road to Jericho, we will not pass to the other side. We know the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong.
That's scripture right there.
Do you not think an angel rides in the whirlwind?
What? An angel rides in the whirlwind. Hear him out.
And directs this storm. This work continues. The story goes on. And an angel still rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm.
And directs this storm is what he says. So this is his belief. I mean, where's he getting this at? Where's he getting this? An angel.
Transfer of authority is.
An angel rides in the whirlwind. Do you not think? He's quoting, right? So let's find out what he's quoting here. Okay. The reference, a historical reference to Thomas Jefferson from John Page. This was a letter written, okay, from John Page to Thomas Jefferson. And at the end of the letter, you can look it up and read the letter, but at the end of the letter, it says, he says, John Page does, "I am highly pleased with your declaration. God preserve the United States. We know the race is not to the swift, nor the battle to the strong. Do you not think an angel rides in the whirlwind and directs this storm?" Okay, so I put this picture of Adam Weishaupt here because I want to show you what this is about. Okay, so let's take a look, a further look at this. Let me see. Okay, so he's writing something to Thomas Jefferson, and this is where W. Bush got his quote from. Not this one right here, but the letter before here. And I'm going to tell you that that's related to Adam Weishaupt. Okay, now I want to read you this one. You look at that and you're like, okay, well, who's Page? Who is John Page? And then, most of us probably, I'm sure, know who Thomas Jefferson, one of our early presidents. I think he might have been the second president. So then, you think on that for a moment, and he makes this reference here, as he ends the letter. And this is in 1776. So these are our founding fathers in the year where they declared independence. Okay, what I'm basically going to show you here is that they were creating much of the same things that we're seeing today, right? Order out of chaos. And so he starts off, Thomas Jefferson, rather, writes a letter to Bishop James Madison. And, whether or not Thomas Jefferson was a Freemason, it seems that he wasn't. And you'll see if you read this letter he writes, and he's writing to a bishop, which means, this is a man of God. That doesn't mean, because someone's a pastor or minister or whatever, that they are, completely loyal, or they don't have other loyalties that are higher in their list, I guess. So, but he says, "Dear sir, I have received your favor of the 17th and communicated it to Mr. Smith. I lately forwarded you a letter from Dr. Priestley endorsed with a book," etc., etc. He goes on, right? I'm just picking out little parts in here. Now, right about here, he before the first red letters, he says, "I have lately by accident got a sight of a single volume, the third, of the Abbé Barruel's Antisocial Conspiracy." That's that first word where I highlighted it, highlighted right in up here in red. Okay, so if you're researching, then you're going to look up who Abbé Barruel's Antisocial Conspiracy, what that is in regards to. Okay, but he goes on, he says, remember, this is Thomas Jefferson writing to Bishop James Madison. He goes on, he says, "Which gives me the first idea I have ever had of what is meant by the Illuminatism against which Illuminati, Morse, as he is now called, and his ecclesiastical and monarchical associates have been making, etc., etc." So Thomas Jefferson is writing James Madison regarding this conspiracy that Abbé Barruel's had written about, and it had to do with Illuminatism, however you want to pronounce that, Illuminatiism. And he also references Illuminati Morse, which I believe was the son of the Morse who created Morse code. But either way, so he's referring to this conspiracy that this guy wrote about, and we'll look at that here in a minute as well. So, I mean, just get a hold on this. There's a conspiracy going on around this time. Okay, this is in 1800, so you're talking about, roughly 24 years after, our Declaration of Independence, where, we broke off from Great Britain. And he refers to, as he's writing, it says, Barul's own parts of the book are perfectly the ravings of a bedlamite, but, and here's the next in red, he quotes largely from Weishaupt, whom he considers as the founder of what he calls the order. Okay, so now you got the word order in here in bold. I emboldened it, but now he's referring to Adam Weishaupt, who is the founder of the Illuminati. Now, what I believe is that from what all the things that I've researched is that these conspirators, well, deep state actors, etc., but these secret societies seem to graduate people, and very often they go out and form, they either continue, like let's say if they're a part of one of the Masonic orders, they either continue high to go higher in level in those areas, Scottish Rite, York Rite, whatever, or they start their own, and I like to call them scams. They make their own scams, the order of, this or that. Aleister Crowley, he was one of those guys as well. And so, I mean, you're going to be shocked to just know how all this stuff connects. So, they go out and form their own orders but they originated somehow very often in one of these more common ones, like the Freemasons. Same thing with Scientologists, L. Ron Hubbard, who started Scientology, and I mean, you start to see, hey, all these, even the Mormon and the Jehovah's Witness, they have their similarities and connections with the secret societies. Okay, so anyways, so he talks about this order, this conspiracy that was spoken of regarding Adam Weishaupt. He goes on and it says, he talks about his doctrines. I highlighted that in red. Look what it says down here where it says, Weishaupt seems to be an enthusiastic philanthropist. That one, it's like, well, I'm pointing it out because you see that who's a popular philanthropist right now, especially right now, and tries to come off enthusiastic about doing good for humanity. Who was that again? Oh, that's right, Bill Gates. Somehow, just using all his money to help mankind. It goes on. He says the next part in red says, who believe in the indefinite perfectibility of man. He thinks he may in time be rendered so perfect that he will be able to govern himself in every circumstance so as to injure none, to do all the good he can, to leave government no occasion to exercise their powers over him. Basically breaking off any kind of control, right? But think about that statement there. In Thomas Jefferson reading about reading Adam Barul's conspiracy writing that had to do with Adam Weishaupt, the Illuminati founder. He says that Weishaupt believes in the indefinite perfectibility of man. That basically man is getting more and more perfected. Okay, this is where the roots of transhumanism come into play, and we could take a huge, I mean, we're going to go over it in general, but like I said, there's no way for me to present all that information. I'd be stuck in there forever. You can make a whole series of just, transhumanism and where it originated. But these are those places where if you're aware of it, then you recognize the language here that he's using. Okay. This is what it means to be illuminated. Okay. So, and then to break off government control. Look what he says down at the bottom. He reiterates it says, and of course, to render political government useless. That one's, a surprise there too, right? He's talking about after they gain full control. This, is Godwin's doctrine. And I put doctrine there too, because that's what they're teaching. They're not just, proclaiming things. We'll talk about that as well, because in one sense they are proclaiming, they're practicing the prophetic in that regard. But it says, and this is what Robinson, Barul, and Morse have called a conspiracy against all government. So there was they're acknowledging who, if you're studying history, you're going to say, oh, these guys are fools. They believe in conspiracies. They have these conspiracy theories. No, these were actual conspiracies, no doubt. Okay, so let's look at the next part of the letter. Okay, so it says Weishaupt believes that to promote this perfection of the human character was the object of Jesus Christ. Okay, that's a part of what our Lord gives us, but this is where they start to corrupt, and they bring in these religious components, really, in my opinion, to corrupt and to really put it under the cover of good for humanity. It's like every scientific, think about this, every scientific, and they're going to show that in a minute here, every scientific endeavor has to do with always healing people of some ailment or something, some disease, that way it's the good for humanity, especially they're every aborted baby body part that they're buying up, they want you to think it's going towards science. That's an outright lie. It's so sinister, I'm gonna walk you through that eventually. I just don't want to be sidetracked on it right now, but it's absolutely evil, the agenda behind it. Okay, so it says that they're saying that that's what Jesus was trying to do as well. Further down in the next red section, it says, the foundation for liberty, then our grand master Jesus of Nazareth. So he's saying that Jesus basically was like a Freemason, an Illuminati person. He believes the Freemasons were originally possessed of the true principles and object of Christianity, like saying those are the real Christians, the Freemasons. Okay, it's a lie, of course. It has nothing to do with that. They have this craft and this endeavor, to do things that has nothing to do with Christianity. This is about Satan's twist on things. But it goes on again. He says, and have still preserved some of them by tradition, but much disfigured the means he proposes to effect this improvement of human nature are to enlighten men. So that's again what they're saying, Illuminati or enlightenment, and that's the angle they use. Who doesn't want to be enlightened, right? In one sense, I'm trying to do that right now. Red pilling people, helping people wake up and see the truth, which is associated with the light. But they say those things because they have a whole different perspective. Okay, so let me go ahead and move to the next part. Okay, so then down here it says, okay, so I went ahead and put my cursor back on here. That should make it easier for me to point some of this out for you. It says he knew that caution was necessary. Get a load of this right here. Let me start right here. As Weishaupt lived under the tyranny of a despot and priests, he knew that caution was necessary even in spreading information, and the principles of pure morality he proposed therefore to lead the Freemasons to adopt this object and to make the objects of their institution the diffusion, get a load of this, of science and virtue. So think about what he's saying there. That this, now remember, Thomas Jefferson is writing that this is what was said about Adam Weishaupt, that he said basically being cautious about spreading the information, and that they're going to diffuse or they're going to spread it through science and virtue. He's basically saying this is how they're masking their efforts, under science and virtue. And boy, I can tell you right now that that's absolutely what so much of it is being done. However they're doing, it's like the defunding the police thing, for example. It's like anybody in their right mind knows that that's something that is, can't happen necessarily. You could do it. I'm just saying where it's like it doesn't make sense to not have any police, but they're trying to say it's for the good somehow. Not to mention the science part. I mean, everything's under that, you know, even the whole medical field falls under that, you know, as if that has some authority over us, even still, you know. That's, you know, another tactic they use. But he's saying it right here, and you got to think this is 200 years ago. This is over 200 years ago. All the same stuff we see still in play. And that's because this stuff is not anything new. This was created in the beginning. In fact, Genesis in chapter 1, verse 2, you know, first in 1, it says God created the heavens and the earth, right? And then what happens? Chaos. In verse 2 is chaos. And now that had to do with Satan and his rebellion. But either way, it's the same tactics, and this is when you really can start recognizing their fruit. But it says he proposed to initiate new members. Get this, into this body by gradations. In other words, you know, they're going to start. You know, he's saying that they're going to bring people in little by little. And that's why I said, if you're a part of any of these organizations, Demolay, you know, Elks, Moose Lodge, whatever they are, whatever they call themselves, you know, the Freemasons, you know, all these groups, you're taking oaths where, you know, it sounds good, just like you can say some of these, just like Bush's speech where he's quoting scripture, but then he says something that's off scripture and mates it together. And just like what Thomas Jefferson is writing about how they're going to go about it under the guise, under the cover of science and virtue, you know, I mean, think about that. And it says right here, it says, proportioned to his fears of the thunderbolts of tyranny, this has given an air of mystery to his views, was the foundation of his banishment and the subversion of the Masonic order. In other words, this now he's about to go into the French Revolution, I think, because that had to do somewhat with Adam Weishaupt. Okay, and let's look at the next part of it. It says, this subject being new to me, I have imagined that if it be so do you also. You may receive the same satisfaction in seeing which, okay, now take a look, I have had in informing the analysis of it. And I just highlighted that part because I want to make mention that, look, he's analyzing what he read, you know, and by that he's picking out a lot of these things, and I just want to encourage you, do the same thing. You know, anybody reading this, you almost, you know, I've read stuff, you know, in the past before I was really awoke, and, you know, read stuff like this where it's like, okay, I don't know what they're talking about. It sounds, you know, intellectual or whatever, however you want to, you know, put on it. And it sounds great, you know, and you just kind of assume, okay, you don't really know their language. They're very highly educated and sophisticated individuals, etc. I never think that anymore of anybody. You know, not that there aren't, you know, smart people, but, you know, if you're, you know, legit, then you don't make things sound so difficult with all kinds of words that are very extremely uncommon. Like if I was a scientist, okay, there's going to be some words that are common to, you know, my area of influence, or, you know, knowledge, or, you know, associations with people, etc. But you wouldn't normally communicate like that. And when you read some of these things, you know, take note that they are communicating in a very, I guess, kind of like in a cryptic type of language. It's mixed in with other stuff. And I'm not saying Jefferson's writings, but here specifically, but a lot of these writings, I mean, he's having to use some of these words because he's referring to, you know, some of these characters. And that's where it's like, okay, I want to use some of those words as well, kind of have to in order to define them and what they're doing. But to explain it, it's very simple. I've said this, numerous times, but the most powerful revelations I've ever received from the Lord have always been the easiest to practice and the simplest to understand once God reveals it to you. In other words, it's kind of like there's a lot of things in the way of you understanding it. You don't know what those things are until they're taken out of the way. A lot of them are, for example, predispositions that we have that we didn't realize. But that's a whole other area. I don't want to really get into that too much. But let's look at just for a moment here, this right here says, he analyzed it, and then it says, and I believe you will think with me that if Weishaupt had written here, let me read that over. And I believe you will think with me that if Weishaupt had written here where no secrecy is necessary in our endeavors to render men wise and virtuous, he would not have thought of any secret machinery for that purpose. So he's basically saying like now, if he was on the up and up, right? If these endeavors are pure and good, like he says, wise and virtuous, then he wouldn't have need to have some kind of structure, or like in this case, machinery. He says, and that's not to mean mechanical machines, but he wouldn't have to put like these gradations that he referred to, in ways to introduce it, right? If you got nothing bad or no bad intentions, then you have no reason to keep those things secret. Especially when you're talking about other people. If it's about you personally, it's like, well, you can keep as many secrets as you want. That's you share whatever you want with the people you're most intimate with. But this has to do with controlling, the country here. And so he's very, in my opinion, Thomas Jefferson was very on point with this. And then he goes on and says some more stuff. And like I said, he references, Napoleon Bonaparte and this character Godwin and Germany and so forth. Okay, so let's move on a little bit. Okay, so earlier, now remember, Thomas Jefferson had just read what this character Augustin Berulle had written. Okay, and then he's relaying that information to Bishop, man of God, James Madison. Okay, so now let's look up this guy. Who was Berulle? And this is just a simple like Wikipedia deal. But it says he was a French publicist and a Jesuit priest. So this is a Christian. And it says he's now mostly known for setting forth the conspiracy theory involving the Bavarian Illuminati, okay, and the Jacobins. And you can look up those things and you'll find out even more stuff. But it says in 1797, in short, Berulle wrote that the French Revolution was planned and executed by the secret societies. Okay, so a lot of what I've been telling you, and it's like, wow, look, there were men of God letting people know about these secret societies even back then, that they were starting wars, revolutions. In this case, they were dividing countries. That's exactly what they were doing. Now, the way they put this, just tells me something. I don't fully trust Wikipedia. I know some people have said, don't trust Wikipedia at all because anybody can put information there. But it's like, look, I don't, in one point, I don't trust anybody. I'm going to research it on my own. I'm going to let God confirm those things on my own. One of the things I like about Wikipedia is that anybody could put it. If I knew some truth, I could go up there and write it on there possibly as well. So that's you got to take everything with a grain of salt like that. Like I said, trust your common sense, trust the Lord and his leading of you, and that's going to always require faith to some degree. Okay. To the biggest degree. But then it says, look at down here at the bottom. If I move out of the way so you can read it, his basic idea was that of a conspiracy with the aim of overthrowing Christianity. Now, if and when I say it, people are skeptical and they just think, man, this thinking there's this plot against Christians. Well, only if you believe the Bible. Okay, so, and I do, so absolutely. And I can point out all the scripture that points to an absolute conspiracy. You know, you're talking about one kingdom versus another. You're talking about the kingdom of Christ coming in to overthrow that which Satan has attained. And I say attained because he even says when he's addressing Jesus that this authority was given to him. In other words, you know, God gave it to us, humanity. He gave it to man. And then little by little, and sometimes big swipes at a time, he's gained much of the authority. You know, we know every kingdom that was in that region of the apple of God's eye, which is, you know, the promised land. We know that every one of those kingdoms since the beginning has been ruled by Satan. He's the dragon with the 7 heads, right? And so, anyways, it also says that Baruch's conspiracy is notable for suggesting, right here, an association between the occult, the French Enlightenment, which would be the Illuminati, and Freemasons, which are the secret societies, which they're all secret societies, you know, even the occult, they don't come out and let you know exactly what they're doing. He says, and thereby associated paganism, you know, with enlightenment. And that would be absolutely correct. That's exactly what it is. What else? It says a trend followed by some later reactionary thinkers and even contemporary intellectual historians. Look, it's just the truth. That's what it is. And, you know, it's up to you if you want to, you know, go further and study and look into it. And I recommend that you do. I think once you do and you see all the things that point to it, and these are things that, you know, they don't teach us. They don't show us this stuff in history. My belief is that, and I wouldn't know this 100%, but I've heard plenty of testimony and read plenty of information that they do teach this information with their own spin on it. Once you get into higher levels of universities, like if you went to Harvard or Yale, where these guys, you know, basically sell their soul to the devil, you know, they're getting not their bachelor's degree, they're going up even further degrees. That's where some of these, like I told you earlier,